Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to the Mental Wellness Wake Up Show, a weekly podcast where growth minded, creative people come to learn best practices from both spirituality and psychology that create lasting well being. I am your host, mental wellness expert, improvised acting teacher, therapist, and coach, Dawn McMillan. Let's get to it. All right, you gorgeous, beautiful people, let's jump right in. So, what I want to talk about today is beliefs. What do you believe? One of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung is something like, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it controls your life and feels like fate. That's a paraphrase, I'm pretty sure. There's a sense in which we, as thinking, rational beings, we make these decisions in our lives, and yet somehow we find ourselves being a complete mystery to ourselves, being a complete surprise to ourselves. One thing that comes up a lot with clients is they'll say, I don't know why I do that, or why did he do that, or why did she do that? And I coach them to realize that even if you ask that person, they don't necessarily have a real or true answer. What we are very good as human beings at doing is justifying things that have already happened. Even in the moment, we think we have a reason and then we do things. What Lisa Feldman Barrett's research is showing, that we do things and then explain it. That the way that our inner world works is not the way that we have always believed it did, nor is it as sequential as it seems. We think, I'm going to move my arm, and then I move my arm. But the way it tends to work is your arm starts to move, and then your brain notices that your arm is moving, and you realize that you wanted to pick up the cup. And I know that's a little hard to fathom in a certain way. And for that, let me refer you to Lisa Feldman Barrett and her work. The reason why I'm bringing that up is, as a therapist, I know lots of different techniques and I use them, and also ultimately, it really all comes down to, what do you believe? What do you believe? And I always hesitate to frame things in an individualistic way because it is so easy to weaponize absolutely everything we ever say about responsibility, about autonomy, about how you're responsible for your results, all of that stuff that sounds great on a cat poster, but ultimately can be used to turn against ourselves or each other. In some spiritual traditions, they say, you are 100% responsible for everything that happens to you. Whew. So then you start thinking, so I'm responsible for being abused as a 4-year-old? And then we get into some pretty far out justifications for making that true. So when I say that ultimately it comes down to what you believe, I am not in any way blaming or shaming you or anyone else for what you believe to be true and the results that that creates. Everything that you believe, you come to for excellent reasons. If you live in a world that continually tells you that you're kind of not acceptable as a human being because of your race, and somehow that seeps into your self-esteem, of course it does. Of course it does. Of course, if you are told that, you're no good and you're stupid, 360 days out of the year for the first 18 years of your life, of course that's going to seep into your beliefs about the world. Even if you rationally know that it's unfair, it's unjust, it's not right, there's a level of subconscious programming that's going to be affecting you. So when I say it really comes down to what you believe, It's not about what you think consciously or even necessarily what you tell yourself, although that's a huge part of it. And that's a tool we use to change what you believe. A lot of what you believe was programmed into you by your environment and by other people, by your culture, by your ancestral heritage. And for some people, that is a tough pill to swallow too. We don't like to think that we are at the effect of other people. We don't like to think that we are vulnerable to advertising, to cultural messages. But if you'll just go with me that you are, that the things that you read, that you hear, that you see, that you don't read, that you don't hear, that you don't see, have been working on you in very subtle ways over time, that can be empowering. It can be empowering to say, hey, there appears to be some programming in my operating system that are leading to results that I, the being, the conscious thinking being, do not enjoy and do not want. And so now, observing that, I'm going to take responsibility for changing that programming, even if I am unwilling to take the blame for that programming being there. And alternately, if the idea that other people have influenced you more than you're cognitively aware of is disturbing to you, you can take the point of view of, I'm seizing these reins because I'm in charge of me. I'm in charge of me. So I'm going to investigate everything going on in my head and take charge of what that is moving forward. So let's, for now, believe what I have come to believe, which is that it is done unto you as you believe. Ooh. And again, not from a place of being a victim, not from a place of victimizing others, not from a place of shame or blame. I heard a great quote recently. It was someone quoting someone, so I really can't give you credit where it's due. But the idea is that if you live long enough, you will be victimized. Things will happen to you. Fires happen, car accidents happen, mudslides happen, stock market crashes happen. Things happen in the world that victimize you. That is different than living in victimhood. So we're not talking about living in victimhood while acknowledging that sometimes people are victimized by situations, people and places and things around them. Okay, enough of the fine print. Let's get into the goodies. But before we do, could you please, if you haven't yet, or if you want to again, go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. Those reviews are precious commodities and they make a difference to getting the podcast out to other people who might benefit from it. And thank you for sharing the podcast with other people and referring them to it. I'm looking at you, Ro, who gets MVP and extra gold stars for sharing the podcast, because it really makes a difference, not just to me. And yes, it does make a difference to me. I really appreciate that. I really love getting this work out into the world. And the more people that are on the same page of creating lasting well-being, the happier I think we all are. And also, people are struggling. They are looking for resources to be helpful to them and so that they can be helpful to others. And this podcast is a resource that could benefit them. So thank you. So what do you believe? A lot of the work in deep therapy is uncovering those beliefs that are driving us. And for this context, I want to share with you the work of George Pratt and Peter Lambrou. So they have a couple of pop psychology books out there that are really good. They're really good. It combines traditional psychology with energy work, which is right in my wheelhouse, I will have you know. And in their Code to Joy book, which is old, it's really old. they identify 7 core beliefs that are at the root of a lot of the trauma. And these are good. Hear me now, believe me later. If you believe one of these 7 things, and there's a strong possibility that you do, unwinding one of them to any degree will up-level your life in beautiful, glorious, and amazing ways. So, what are these core beliefs? Number 1, I am not safe. There's a reason why therapists like to do safe space meditations. There's a reason why we talk about getting resourced. There's a reason why we talk about emotional safety in the context of having difficult conversations. I am not safe is a core negative, I hate the word negative, but is a core unhelpful belief that can drive us. And if you'll recall from the episode I did a while back about core needs, safety and survival is the most basic core need. So if for any reason you have come to believe in any way, I am not safe, that's going to drive your behavior in ways that may or may not be helpful to you. I am worthless. I am worthless. There's a lot of people who have a varying amount of that belief. It's hard not to. It's really hard not to have that one. So much of our value is placed on superficial things. How do you look? How do you achieve? If you were bullied as a child for not being athletic, you're going to think I am worthless because you're not what your culture is telling you should be. If you were praised for being athletic and nothing else, you may acquire this I am worthless belief because you believe that your worth is only found in one thing. So, unhelpful belief number 1, I am not safe. Number 2, I am worthless. Number 3, I am powerless. It's hard to get through childhood without that one. When you are small, other people literally force you to do things. They pick you up, they make you go to bed, they take charge of everything that you eat, say, think, or do. You can begin to get that belief, I am powerless. And if you've had a significant invasion trauma, especially one that elicited a freeze response, I am powerless is going to be in your operating system. Number 4, I am not lovable. Your parents are flawed. Your caregivers are flawed human beings. Raise your hand if you're perfect. And if you still have a hand, you might not be perfect because you haven't evolved into a little bubble of light and ascended into the universe, right? So your caregivers are flawed people, and they probably did their best to love you, and it probably did not meet all of your needs, no matter how great your parents are, or not, or your grandmother, or whoever raised you. Flawed human beings love others in flawed ways. And we begin to internalize that, excuse me, as I am not lovable. Pardon. I am not lovable, or I'm only lovable if. My love is contingent on how much I make my parents proud. So number 1, I'm not safe. Number 2, I'm worthless. Number 3, I'm powerless. 4, I'm not lovable. 5, I cannot trust anyone. If you have experienced some kind of trauma, there's a strong possibility that that trauma was from someone who you trusted. Otherwise, how else could they get close enough to you to traumatize you? If your basic needs have not been met in some way, then that will instill a lack of trust, because if you could trust them, you would have gotten your needs met. If someone's ever said anything hurtful to you, ever, that undermines your trust, undermines your sense of safety. If you don't feel safe, you can't trust people. If you don't trust people, you don't feel safe. I cannot trust anyone. 6, I am bad. And its corollary, there's something wrong with me. For those of us born in certain cultures and certain generations, when we did something that our parents disapproved of, the response was, "You're bad." And then we believe them, right? So you're thinking, not I did bad or something bad was occurring. We begin to believe, I am bad. There's something about me that is evil, bad, and wrong. And then the last one is, I am alone. And again, it relates to that idea of not having gotten your needs met. If you're sort of left to fend for yourself in some way, it may encode in you this belief that you're alone, that no one really loves you, no one really takes care of you, no one really cares for you. It's that belief, I am alone. And it also can be a sort of existential angst, right? That you realize that, it's a big wide world out there and you're alone inside your own body. There's a lot of spiritual traditions and cultural legends and stories about that, seeking another to complete ourselves or that kind of stuff. Because even when you are in the company of other people, it's always only you inside your own body. So there's a sense in which there can be a kind of aloneness. So let's review those self-limiting beliefs, the big 7, I call them. I am not safe. I am worthless. I am powerless. I am not lovable. I cannot trust anyone. I'm bad. I'm alone. Most people I've ever worked with, and again, I'm a therapist, so naturally there's a self-selection process into my office of people who not only are struggling with something, but know that they are struggling with something. 90% of the time, people have some version of all 7. So if you're listening to this and there's something kind of itchy, crunchy, scratchy in your vibe, hearing me say these words, you're like, oh, there's something resonant about them. Congratulations. You're a human being in a body on the planet. And I really want to iterate over and over again. It's not because the people in your childhood were bad people, although some of them may have been. Some of us have been through some things that no human being should have to endure. Some of us are able to see that, our parents were deeply traumatized. They were mentally ill. They were struggling, whatever the situation may have been. Or some of us are currently in situations with deeply disturbed people. We don't have to make them evil, bad, and wrong to acknowledge that our interactions with other human beings on the planet has instilled some self-limiting beliefs, okay? So we can address all of this without any shame or blame. So what I want to do is just give you a little bit of antidote. It's really not, a cure-all, but mirror work really does make a difference. So here are a little bit of counteractive measures that you can take. Spend a little time in the mirror. Look at yourself in the eyes and tell yourself, you are safe. You are worthy. You are powerful and capable. You are loving and you are loved. You are surrounded by trusting, trustworthy friends. You bring value to everyone you meet. And you are never alone. You are connected to all the life there is. And if you look at yourself in the eyes and you say those things, It might be mighty uncomfortable. Let that be okay. And if it is done unto us as we believe, and there's a way in which that is true, our beliefs create our interpretations of the world. Our interpretations of the world create our reactions to the world. Our reactions to the world are behaviors that inspire behaviors in others. You are safe. You are worthy. You are powerful and capable. You are loving and you are loved. You are surrounded by trusting, trustworthy friends. You bring value to everyone you meet. And you are not alone. And as you begin to implant these words into your own subconscious, to your own unconscious, you begin to defuse and you begin to break apart that programming from others a little bit. And if you break it apart a little bit and you start responding a little bit differently, you'll start getting little different results. Those results become self-reinforcing. And maybe you look up and a year from now, you read your old journal and you're like, oh, wow, I haven't felt or thought like that in a long, long time. You are safe. You are worthy. You are powerful and capable. You are loving and you are loved. You are surrounded by trusting, trustworthy friends. You bring value to everyone you meet. And it is true that you are not alone. You are connected to all the life there is. A little bit of a fine print here. There's a little bit of a messy middle as you're transitioning from how you were to how you will be. Maybe a little disruptive. Let that be okay. It's not a sign that you're doing anything wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. If you begin to believe that you are loving and that you are loved, and someone in your environment is not on that vibe, they are not loving and they are not treating you as someone who is loved and loving, that relationship may change, or you may discover that it no longer suits you. Let that be okay. Let change be okay. Because if you're listening to this podcast right now, you're the kind of person who's open to change. So let that be okay. And you know what? It's okay not to be okay. It's also okay to be okay. You're not hurting anyone by having your own well-being, and you're not helping anyone by being a hot mess. So I give you permission to have your own healing. I give you permission to be okay, even if so many people around you are not. Your okayness will give you so many more resources to help them find their okayness. And can I remind you that you, beautiful, glorious, gorgeous being that you are whole, perfect, and complete in the here, in the now, in the past, and in the future. And you are worthy and deserving of so much awesome. Even more than that. Imagine some awesome. Yeah, even more than that. And even more than that. And 10 times more than that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you so much. Now go out and be awesome, and I will see you next time.